What would you do if you walked into a quiet restaurant expecting nothing more than a meal, and suddenly found yourself face to face with the ghost of someone you thought you'd lost forever? A simple dinner becomes a portal to a complex past. Richard Ellison, a man whose name was synonymous with success, wealth, and power, spent most evenings alone in his opulent Los Angeles penthouse. At 52 years old, he was one of the nation's top tech billionaires, commanding boardrooms and closing multi-million-dollar deals with ruthless efficiency. Yet beneath the gleaming surface of his life, filled with rare artwork and priceless artifacts, there was an emptiness no fortune could fill. A void carved out by the loss of the one person he had loved above all else, his wife, Catherine. Years ago, Catherine had been his partner, confidant, and great love, but fate had torn them apart. Shortly after their separation, she had perished in a tragic car accident, leaving Richard with a puzzle he had spent the past decade trying to solve. Every Sunday morning, as if ritual, he visited her modest grave in a quiet cemetery on the outskirts of the city, a sacred place, embraced by ancient oak trees, whose rustling leaves seemed to whisper lost laughter and fading promises. It was the only connection he still maintained to the woman who once filled his life with love and laughter. One warm afternoon after a grueling business meeting in Silicon Valley, Richard found himself restless in the midst of a city that never slept. The relentless noise of upscale hotels, the suffocating pressure of high-stakes decisions, and the constant barrage of investor calls had all worn him down. Craving simplicity, a meal, a moment of solitude, and a break from the endless calculations, he decided to drive aimlessly through Los Angeles until he discovered a small, family-owned bistro tucked away on a bustling side street in downtown LA. The neon Sunset Bistro sign flickered invitingly in the early evening drizzle. Although it wasn't glamorous like the private clubs and rooftop lounges Richard was accustomed to, the diner exuded a down-to-earth warmth that called to him. Parking his sleek, midnight black limousine near the curb, he stepped out into the cool California air and walked into the humble establishment, where the ambient clink of silverware and soft strains of classic jazz set a tone of quiet comfort. The interior was cozy. Time-worn wooden booths lined the walls, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the lingering scent of home-cooked meals, a sharp contrast to the sterile, minimalist boardrooms of his world. Richard chose a corner booth away from the handful of other patrons scattered about, settling into the seat with a measured sigh. As he picked up the menu, he felt a strange flicker of nostalgia stir within him. Memories of simpler times, when his heart was light and his future seemed filled with hope. He brushed aside the feeling, attributing it to the weariness of a long day, and waited for his order. Moments later, a soft voice called out, "Good evening, sir. May I help you?" Richard looked up, and his breath caught in his throat. Standing before him was a young waitress whose gentle features and quiet demeanor were hauntingly familiar. Her deep hazel eyes, the graceful tilt of her head, and even the soft cadence of her voice reminded him vividly of Catherine. For a moment, time seemed to slow as he struggled to reconcile the image before him with the painful memory of the woman he had lost. "Thank you," he managed, forcing himself to speak in a steady tone. "I'll have the filet mignon, medium rare, with a side of seasonal vegetables and a glass of sparkling water, please." The waitress, who introduced herself hesitantly as Emily, nodded politely and moved on, leaving Richard's heart pounding with a mix of hope and disbelief. As he sat there, staring at his untouched meal, Richard's mind churned with questions. Could it be possible that this young woman, with every nuance of her expression and every subtle gesture, was connected to Catherine in some way? Memories of his late wife's kind smile and encouraging words in his childhood flooded back. Catherine had once been the guiding light who'd told him, "Richard, you're destined for greatness. Believe in yourself." The recollection was so powerful that he felt compelled to find out the truth. Leaning forward, he raised his hand and, with a voice laced with both determination and vulnerability, asked, "Excuse me, may I ask your name, miss?" The waitress paused for a split second, then replied softly, "My name is Emily Reyes." For a long suspended moment, Richard stared at her as if trying to memorize every detail. "Emily, don't you remember me?" he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I was in your 5th grade class at Westwood Elementary. You told me, Richard, you're going to do great things. Just believe in yourself." At those words, Emily's eyes widened with shock and uncertainty. "Sir, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you mean," she murmured, taking an involuntary step back. Richard's heart pounded. The resemblance was too strong to ignore. He pulled from his wallet a faded photograph, a picture of Catherine on their wedding day, radiant with joy and youthful promise. With trembling fingers, he slid the photo across the table. "This is Catherine Ellison," he said, his voice breaking. "She was my wife. I've searched for answers about her death for years. I always wondered if there was more to our story than I ever knew." Emily's face went pale as she stared at the photograph. Her eyes shimmered with tears, and in a hushed, trembling voice she confessed, "Sir, I'm not who you think I am. I'm actually your daughter." The revelation hit Richard like a tidal wave. The past that he had so painstakingly buried, filled with unresolved grief and unanswered questions, now surged back in an avalanche of raw emotion. "My daughter," he whispered, scarcely believing it. Emily, whose voice wavered between sorrow and hope, continued, "Yes, sir. After my mother died in that terrible accident, I was taken in by a family friend. I never knew my father until now." For years, Richard had searched for any sign of Catherine's true life, convinced that a piece of her, and a secret too dangerous to reveal, had been hidden away. The idea that his lost love had left behind not only memories but also a daughter, an unknown link to a past he thought he'd lost forever, filled him with both immense joy and heartbreaking regret. Determined to uncover the truth behind the secret, Richard immediately called his trusted private investigator, Marcus Reed, a seasoned professional who had solved countless mysteries for his elite clients. "I need you to find out everything about Emily Reyes," Richard said sharply. "Who she really is, where she's been, and why she was at my wife's memorial at that diner yesterday." Marcus, accustomed to delving into the hidden lives of the powerful, promised to work on the case and report back with any information he could gather. Over the next several days, while Richard's high-powered meetings continued to occupy his daylight hours, his thoughts were consumed by the mysterious young woman who had unexpectedly reconnected him with a part of his past that he had long presumed lost. Marcus's investigation led him through a labyrinth of family records, school archives, and private interviews. Finally, 5 days later, he returned with a comprehensive report. The file revealed that Emily Reyes was in fact the daughter of Catherine Ellison, a secret that Catherine had desperately guarded. Following her separation and the subsequent accident that claimed her life, Catherine had been forced to protect her only child from dangerous individuals connected to a murky underworld of corporate espionage and financial corruption. In a bid to keep her daughter safe, she had entrusted Emily to a close friend who had raised her in anonymity. The report described Emily as a 26-year-old woman whose striking resemblance to her mother was undeniable in every feature. "She has your mother's eyes and gentle smile," Marcus had written, "and appears to have grown up in a world far removed from the luxury of your empire." Richard's hands trembled as he examined the file and saw a recent photograph of Emily. A photo that stirred memories of his lost love and filled him with an overwhelming need to reconcile the past. Unable to ignore the revelations any longer, Richard arranged to meet with the woman's adoptive family. He drove his sleek limousine to a modest suburb on the outskirts of Los Angeles, where he found the home of Angela Rivera, a warm, resilient woman in her early 40s who had raised Emily as her own daughter. The house was modest, a far cry from Richard's opulent mansion, but it exuded a sense of safety and love. When Angela answered the door, Richard introduced himself with a voice trembling with both hope and apprehension. "I'm Richard Ellison," he said. "I believe you know something about Emily Reyes. I need to understand why she was at my late wife's memorial and what secrets she holds." Angela's eyes widened, and after a long, painful silence, she invited him in. In the living room, adorned with family photographs and cherished mementos, Angela explained with quiet regret that Emily had always been special, a child whose lineage was kept hidden to protect her from enemies who had once haunted Catherine's past. "Your Catherine loved Emily more than words can say," Angela said softly, "but the cost of that love was high. She believed that by hiding her, she could keep you both safe. I never intended to replace her, only to protect you both from a dangerous truth. Richard's heart ached with both sorrow and a dawning realization that the mystery of his lost love was far more complex than he had ever imagined. In the following weeks, Richard and Angela met frequently. Through tear-stained conversations and long, reflective walks in quiet parks, Angela revealed that after Catherine's death, she had been entrusted with Emily's care by a friend who had feared retribution from powerful figures in the corporate underworld. Individuals who had once sought to silence Catherine for her courage in exposing a scandal that threatened to shake the foundations of the tech industry. Angela confessed that Emily's visits to Catherine's grave had been her way of keeping her mother's memory alive, a silent tribute to the woman who had once been the heart of their family. As Richard listened, the weight of decades of grief and unanswered questions slowly began to lift, replaced by a fragile hope that he could still reclaim the family he had lost. Haunted by the bittersweet revelation, Richard returned to his mansion, where his mind raced through memories of a love long lost and a secret daughter he had never known. Every Sunday morning, as he now visited Catherine's grave with fresh flowers, he felt a renewed connection to the past, a sense that despite the bitter years of isolation and the hollow triumphs of corporate success, there was a chance for healing. Yet the specter of that secret past was not content to remain buried. Anonymous messages began to appear on his private email, and subtle threats hinted that the dangerous figures who had once forced Catherine into hiding were still watching his every move. Richard's days, once filled solely with boardroom battles and strategic negotiations, now carried the constant undercurrent of peril. Determined to protect the fragile new family he was slowly building, Richard tightened security around his personal affairs and began an exhaustive investigation into the shadowy figures mentioned in Angela's revelations. Late one night, as the city lights of Manhattan twinkled beneath a velvet sky, his private investigator, Marcus Reed, reported back with startling news. One of the key players in the conspiracy was a powerful executive named Victor Langston, a man with deep ties to the very corporate network that had once tried to silence Catherine. Marcus's report detailed Victor's involvement in several high-profile cover-ups and hinted that his influence extended far beyond the tech world. "He is closer than you think," Marcus warned in his final note, "and he will do whatever it takes to keep his secrets buried." Richard's blood ran cold at the thought that the enemy who had once forced his beloved Catherine into hiding might still be lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Desperate for closure and fueled by a newfound determination to expose the truth, Richard devised a daring plan. He arranged for a high-profile charity gala in New York City, a public event that would draw the attention of the media and the influential alike. With every detail meticulously planned, Richard intended to use the gala as a platform not only to showcase his philanthropic efforts, but also to publicly confront the corruption that had haunted his family for so long. Invitations were sent to top executives, influential philanthropists, and key figures in the tech industry, all while Richard's mind remained focused on the hidden enemy whose actions had torn his family apart. On the night of the gala, the grand ballroom of a prestigious Manhattan hotel buzzed with anticipation. Crystal chandeliers hung from the soaring ceiling, and the polished marble floors reflected the opulence of the event. Richard took the stage before a captivated audience, his voice resonant with determination as he began. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate not only success, but the enduring truth that every secret eventually comes to light. I stand before you not just as a businessman, but as a father who has spent years searching for the answers that were once lost to me." His words drew murmurs of empathy and curiosity from the crowd, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still as he revealed the existence of his daughter, a secret he had guarded for too long. The revelation was met with a mixture of shock and admiration, and whispers of support rippled through the audience. After the gala, in the privacy of his penthouse overlooking the glowing New York skyline, Richard received an unexpected message from Emily, now officially known to him as his daughter. Her message was simple, yet filled with raw emotion. "Dad, I'm ready to help you uncover the truth about Mum. I'm tired of living in the shadows of secrets. Let's bring the past into the light." Richard's heart swelled with a blend of relief and apprehension. He knew that the road ahead would be fraught with danger and painful revelations, but he was determined to face it, together with his daughter. In the weeks that followed, father and daughter embarked on a painstaking journey of investigation and reconciliation. They met with former colleagues of Catherine, scoured old business records, and even visited the cemetery where Catherine's grave lay silent and solemn. Each piece of evidence they uncovered painted a picture of a woman who had been forced to make unthinkable sacrifices to protect her family and to shield her secret from those who would use it as a weapon. The deeper they dug, the more Richard realized that Catherine had not abandoned him by choice. She had been driven away by forces so powerful and corrupt that even his vast wealth and influence might not have been enough to overcome them. Meanwhile, the threat from Victor Langston and his allies loomed larger. Anonymous warnings and subtle acts of intimidation began to infiltrate Richard's carefully controlled world. Late one evening, as a bitter wind swept through the narrow streets of Manhattan and the city's lights blurred into a melancholy haze, Richard received a call from Marcus Reed. "Sir, we've intercepted communications suggesting that Victor Langston is planning a major move. We believe he intends to silence anyone who dares reveal the truth about Catherine's disappearance," Marcus warned gravely. The urgency in Marcus's voice sent a chill down Richard's spine. The stakes had never been higher. Undeterred, Richard and Emily pressed on with their investigation. They discovered that Catherine had been involved with a clandestine organization, a network of corrupt executives and criminals whose tentacles reached into the highest echelons of power. Catherine's courageous attempts to expose their illegal activities had put her life in danger. In one particularly revealing interview with an investigative journalist, a former associate of Catherine confirmed that she had been on the verge of unearthing evidence that could topple some of the most influential figures in the tech industry. She was a fighter, the associate said, his voice thick with admiration and sorrow. But they were too powerful. They forced her into hiding, and in doing so, tore her family apart. As Richard absorbed these revelations, a fierce resolve took root in his heart. He vowed that he would not let his wife's legacy be erased by greed and corruption. With Emily at his side, he began to plan a daring exposé, a public reckoning that would force Victor Langston and his cohorts to answer for their crimes. Their strategy involved a carefully orchestrated press conference, a live-streamed event that would broadcast their findings to the nation. Weeks of meticulous preparation ensued. Richard spent countless hours poring over documents, coordinating with legal experts, and rehearsing his speech. Emily, drawing on her own painful journey of self-discovery, worked alongside him to compile testimonies, photographs, and the damning evidence hidden in the safety deposit box that Catherine had left behind. A box that contained letters, financial records, and a flash drive with digital files that could shatter the carefully constructed facades of the powerful. On the day of the press conference, the atmosphere was electric. Held in a grand auditorium in downtown New York, the event drew media from around the world. Richard stood at the podium, his expression solemn yet determined as he began. "For too long, the truth about my wife's disappearance has been shrouded in darkness. Today I stand before you to reclaim her legacy and to demand accountability from those who would silence the truth." As he spoke, images of Catherine and excerpts from her final letters were projected behind him, each slide a testament to the sacrifices she had made. Emily, standing beside him, added softly, "My mother was a brave woman who risked everything to protect her family. We owe it to her and to all of us to ensure that her story is told." The room fell silent as the gravity of their words sank in, and when the Q&A session began, the questions were pointed and relentless. Victor Langston's name was mentioned repeatedly, and under the scrutiny of the public eye, the corruption he had long concealed began to unravel. In the months following the press conference, a firestorm of legal battles, congressional hearings, and media investigations ensued. Richard's exposé had ignited a nationwide debate about corporate ethics, accountability, and the true cost of greed. The evidence they had gathered proved too damning to ignore, and slowly, one by one, Victor Langston and his conspirators found themselves on trial. Public opinion swayed in favor of Richard and Emily, and for the first time in decades, the legacy of Catherine Ellison was reclaimed, not as a tale of tragedy, but as a beacon of courage and resilience. Yet, amid the whirlwind of media coverage and legal victories, Richard never lost sight of what mattered most: the fragile, redemptive bond between him and his daughter. Their journey of uncovering the truth had brought them closer than ever, healing the wounds of years lost in silence and regret. In quiet moments, late at night when the city's cacophony gave way to introspection, they would sit together, sharing memories of Catherine and planning how best to honor her legacy. "I always believed that my success would fill the void," Richard confessed one evening as they watched the sun set over the Hudson River. "But nothing compares to the warmth of family." Emily squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and hope. "And now I know that our true wealth lies in the love we share, the memories we preserve, and the courage to fight for the truth." As the Harper Legacy Foundation was established in Catherine's name, its mission became clear: to support victims of corporate corruption, to provide educational scholarships for underprivileged youth, and to promote ethical leadership in the business world. The Foundation's programs expanded rapidly, touching thousands of lives across the nation. Richard made it his life's work to ensure that no one else would be forced to endure the painful isolation he had once known. His speeches on grief and redemption resonated in boardrooms, universities, and community centers alike, inspiring countless people to redefine their definitions of success. "We may lose what we hold dear," he would say in interviews, "but by embracing the truth and sharing our vulnerabilities, we can create legacies that are far more enduring than any fortune." In one of his most poignant addresses, delivered at a national conference on corporate ethics in Washington, D.C., Richard stood before a diverse audience and declared, "There was a time when I believed that wealth could heal all wounds. I now know that the greatest healing comes from within, from the forgiveness we extend to ourselves and the love we share with those we've lost. My wife's story is a testament to the fact that even in our darkest moments, hope is never truly lost." The audience's rapt attention and standing ovation affirmed the power of his message. Meanwhile, Emily dedicated herself to using her newfound position as the key to unlocking the mystery of her mother's past to help others. She began speaking at schools and mentoring young women, urging them to trust in their own strength and to seek truth even when it seemed painful. Her heartfelt vlogs and interviews quickly amassed a loyal following on social media, where hashtags like "Legacy of Hope" and "Family Heals" spread her message far and wide. Despite the public scrutiny and the occasional harsh criticism from those who doubted her motives, Emily remained steadfast in her commitment to honor Catherine's memory and to build a future where transparency and compassion reigned. Over time, the trials and tribulations of the past gave way to a future that sparkled with the promise of redemption and renewal. Richard, once consumed by the relentless pursuit of corporate success, discovered that the true measure of a man was not in the size of his bank account, but in the strength of his relationships and the legacy of love he left behind. Each Sunday as he visited Daniel's grave, a sacred place now shared with the memory of a son he never had, the ache in his heart softened into a quiet acceptance. With Emily by his side, he began to see the contours of a new life emerging from the ruins of old regrets. A life built on the pillars of truth, forgiveness, and the unyielding power of family. One bright spring day, as cherry blossoms painted Central Park in hues of soft pink and white, Richard, along with Emily and his long-estranged daughter Angela, whom he had reconciled with during his journey toward healing, attended a community celebration honoring victims of corporate malfeasance and celebrating stories of personal triumph. In a modest auditorium filled with survivors, activists, and everyday heroes, Richard took the stage once more. "Tonight we honor not just the memory of those we have lost, but also the courage it takes to rebuild," he said, his voice resonant with determination and tenderness. "Let our collective legacy be defined by the truth we dare to share and the love we choose to pass on to future generations." His words, echoed by the heartfelt cheers of the crowd, marked the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where the darkness of the past was slowly replaced by the light of hope and reconciliation. In the months that followed, as Richard's exposé of corruption continued to unravel the tangled web of deceit woven by Victor Langston and his accomplices, the Harper Legacy Foundation expanded its reach. Scholarships were awarded to hundreds of deserving students, community centers sprouted in neighborhoods long forgotten by mainstream society, and the foundation's impact was felt in boardrooms and schools across the nation. Richard's transformation, once marred by grief and isolation, had blossomed into a mission of healing, a mission that resonated with people from every walk of life. True success, he often declared in interviews, is measured not by the accolades we collect, but by the lives we change through our compassion and our willingness to confront the painful truths of our past. Emily, now emerging as a passionate advocate for ethical leadership and personal transparency, frequently appeared on talk shows and in viral video segments, recounting the journey that had reunited her with the father she never knew. In one particularly moving interview, she said, "For so long, I carried the weight of secrets and sorrow. But today, I stand here with my father, not defined by the tragedies of the past, but empowered by the promise of a future built on love and integrity." Her words struck a chord with millions, inspiring a generation to embrace their vulnerabilities and to seek the truth, even when it seemed too painful to face. The legacy of that fateful encounter, where a billionaire's quest for truth led him to confront the hidden past of his family, continued to ripple outward. Documentaries were made about the Harper legacy, capturing the poignant journey from heartbreak to healing. Social media campaigns urged viewers to share their own stories of loss and redemption, and universities incorporated the tale into courses on ethics, leadership, and resilience. Richard's mansion, once a fortress of solitude and regret, transformed into a center for community outreach, where weekly support groups and mentorship programs helped countless others navigate the labyrinth of grief and rebuild their lives on a foundation of love. One wintry evening, as a soft blanket of snow covered the streets of Manhattan and the city lights glowed against the frosty darkness, Richard, Karen, and Lucas attended a memorial service held in honor of victims of corporate corruption. In the hushed, reverent hall, filled with the gentle hum of collective remembrance, Richard stood before the gathered crowd and spoke with a voice both raw and resolute. "We stand together, not as individuals defined by our losses, but as a family forged in the fire of truth and redemption. My journey has taught me that even the deepest scars can heal when we dare to face our past and embrace the love that binds us." The audience listened in rapt silence, and when applause finally erupted, it carried with it the promise that no secret, however painful, could forever eclipse the power of forgiveness. As time marched on, the story of Richard Ellison's long search for truth, the reawakening of his family, and the transformative power of unyielding compassion became a modern parable, a narrative celebrated in boardrooms, classrooms, and community centers alike. His speeches, replete with the hard-won wisdom of years spent in solitude and despair, resonated with people across the country, reminding them that the true legacy we leave behind is not measured in dollars or accolades, but in the lives we touch and the hope we inspire. One particularly memorable afternoon, as the golden light of early summer bathed the city in a soft, dreamlike glow, Richard took a solitary walk through Central Park. The gentle rustling of leaves and the distant laughter of children playing stirred memories of his lost son and the tender moments he had once shared with Catherine. Yet now, accompanied by the quiet strength of his daughter Emily and the healing support of his reconnected family, he found solace in the simple truth that even shattered hearts can mend over time. "I once believed that success was the absence of pain," he mused quietly as he sat on a weathered park bench. "But I now know that true success is the ability to embrace your past, learn from it, and let love guide you forward." In the following years, the Harper Legacy Foundation and its various initiatives continued to expand their impact. Richard established partnerships with mental health organizations to support bereaved families. Emily launched a scholarship program in honor of her mother Catherine, dedicated to young women pursuing careers in education and social work. And Karen, whose resilience had carried her through decades of hardship, became an outspoken advocate for transparency and healing in the wake of corporate malfeasance. Their collective efforts not only redefined what it meant to be a family, but also inspired a nationwide movement to honor the unspoken bonds that unite us all. At one point, during a televised award ceremony honoring champions of social justice, Richard took the stage and, with tears in his eyes, said, "My journey taught me that the pursuit of wealth is hollow without the warmth of love and the strength of family. Every Sunday as I visited my son's grave, I clung to the hope that one day I would understand why I was left with so much loss. Today, I stand before you not as a billionaire, but as a father and a man who has finally found the truth, and in that truth discovered the real meaning of life. The crowd erupted into applause, and in that moment, the message was clear. Even in a world defined by power and success, the simple, unyielding bonds of love are what truly endure. In the quiet aftermath of that evening, as the lights of the award show faded and Richard returned to his modest apartment, a space now filled not with loneliness, but with the joyful echoes of his reassembled family, he sat down to pen one final letter. For too long, he wrote in careful, measured script. I measured my life by my bank account and the accolades I earned. But now I see that the richest treasure in my life is not the wealth I have accumulated, but the love I share with those I hold dear. My son, my daughter, and the legacy of Catherine remind me every day that our truest success lies in our ability to forgive, to rebuild, and to create a future defined by hope. His words, simple yet profound, became a guiding light for all who read them, a timeless testament to the enduring power of truth and the transformative magic of family. Years later, as Central Park continued to flourish with the changing seasons, and the city of New York pulsed with the vibrant energy of new beginnings, the legacy of Richard Ellison, Karen Bennett, and Lucas Bennett was etched into the hearts of those who believed in redemption and the power of connection. Their story, a tale that began at a quiet cemetery and unfolded in the hallowed halls of grief, investigation, and ultimate reconciliation, became a rallying cry for a generation seeking to redefine what it meant to be truly successful. In boardrooms, classrooms, and community centers from New York to Los Angeles, their journey was recounted as a modern parable, a reminder that even the most brilliant empires cannot mend a broken heart, and that sometimes the simple act of revisiting the past can illuminate the path to a brighter future. On one crisp winter evening, as soft snowflakes danced gently on the sidewalks and the glow of street lamps cast a warm light on the city's frozen landscape, Richard stood before Daniel's grave one last time. Surrounded by the quiet reverence of nature and accompanied by Lucas and Karen, he placed a single red rose on the weathered stone. I miss you every day, my son, he whispered, his voice heavy with both sorrow and gratitude. But today I leave you not with tears of regret, but with the promise of a future built on the love and lessons you left behind. As the wind carried his words into the silent night, he felt a measure of peace, a sense that even the deepest wounds, when tended with care and kindness, could one day heal. And so the extraordinary journey that began with a chance encounter at a quiet restaurant, a moment when a billionaire was forced to confront the ghosts of his past and the secrets he had long buried, evolved into a lifelong mission of reconciliation, healing, and the creation of a legacy that transcended wealth. Richard Ellison learned that true power lies not in money or success, but in the strength of the human spirit and the love we share with one another. His story, intertwined with those of Karen and Lucas, became a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever felt alone in the face of loss. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, the light of truth and compassion can guide us home. As the years turned into decades, and the legacy of Daniel Harper was celebrated through scholarships, community programs, and heartfelt speeches across the nation, Richard's mansion, once a symbol of isolation and unreachable success, transformed into a center of family, love, and community outreach. Every act of kindness, every effort to expose the corrupt forces that had once shattered his family, resonated with the truth that the greatest legacy one can leave is the enduring warmth of a connected heart. In the end, as the city lights of Manhattan shimmered like distant stars on a cold winter night, and the quiet murmur of Central Park provided a soothing backdrop, Richard Ellison, Karen Bennett, and young Lucas Bennett continued their journey, a journey defined by the relentless pursuit of truth, the healing power of forgiveness, and the belief that even when life seems to have taken everything away, the bonds of family and the light of compassion can rebuild what was once lost. Their story remains a timeless testament to the fact that no matter how far one may wander in search of answers, the most important truths are those we share with the ones we love, and that, in the end, the only wealth that truly matters is the legacy of love we leave behind.